Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast because tonight we're traveling back in time to walk the silent perimeter of the empire, examining the heavy stone walls, remote forts, and lonely watchtowers that stood guard over Rome. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable, and let's begin. The world of Rome is often imagined as a place of marble columns, bustling forums, and the loud cheers of the amphitheater. We think of the center, the heart, where the pulse of civilization beat the strongest. But tonight, we are going nowhere near the center. We are traveling to the very edge. We are going to the places where the noise stopped and where the silence began. We are going to the line in the sand, or rather, the line in the stone that marked the end of the known world and the beginning of the unknown. Tonight, we look at the defensive systems of Rome, but do not expect the clash of swords or the roar of battle. Those are fleeting moments, rare interruptions in a reality that was mostly defined by stillness. The true story of Rome's defense is a story of static endurance. It is a story of waiting. It is the story of a soldier standing on a wooden walkway, looking out at a dark forest for hours on end, listening to the wind howl through the gaps in the timber. It is the story of the mason, placing one heavy stone upon another, day after day, year after year, constructing a barrier not just against armies, but against the wilderness itself. To understand these systems, we must first understand the concept of the boundary. The Romans called it the limes. It was not always a hard wall, though walls were certainly a part of it. It was a zone, a deep breath taken by the empire before the wilderness exhaled back. In some places, this boundary was a mighty river like the Rhine or the Danube, their waters dark and cold, rushing endlessly toward the sea. In others, it was a desert, vast and shifting, where the heat created mirages that danced on the horizon. And in others still, it was a man-made scar across the landscape, a continuous fortification of turf, timber, and stone that stretched for miles, ignoring the contours of the hills, imposing order on the chaos of nature. Let us transport ourselves to one of these quiet frontiers. Imagine it is late autumn. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The sky is a heavy blanket of gray, pressing down on the landscape. You are standing at the base of a watchtower. It is not a grand palace, nor a monument to vanity. It is a functional structure, square and solid, rising perhaps 3 stories into the air. The stone at the base is rough-hewn, quarried from the local hills. It is cold to the touch, retaining the chill of the night long into the day. Run your hand along the mortar that binds these stones together. It is gritty, a mixture of lime and sand, perhaps mixed with crushed pottery or brick, giving it a slightly pinkish hue in the fading light. This mortar has hardened over decades, becoming as strong as the stone itself. It seals the gaps, keeping out the wind and the rain, protecting the wooden beams inside that support the floors. The tower stands alone, separated from its neighbors by a mile or so, a solitary sentinel in a vast landscape. Look up. The upper stories might be made of timber, dark wood that has been treated with pitch to repel water. Or perhaps the stone continues all the way up, narrowing slightly as it rises to provide stability. There is a small window near the top, a narrow slit, really, designed to let an archer look out, but to let very little else in. No glass covers this opening. It is open to the elements. When the wind blows, it whistles through this slit, a low, mournful note that becomes the soundtrack of the soldier's life. Surrounding the tower is a small ditch. It is not a moat filled with water, but a V-shaped trench dug into the hard ground. Over time, grass has grown on its slopes, softening the sharp edges that were once cut by spades. The earth from the ditch was thrown up to create a low mound on the inner side, topped perhaps with a simple wooden palisade, a fence of sharpened stakes. This is the first line of defense, a humble perimeter that defines the space of the tower from the wild space beyond. Inside the tower, the air is still and smells of wood smoke and unwashed wool. The ground floor is for storage. Here, in the dim light, you can see sacks of grain stacked against the wall. The grain is dry, a vital reserve for the men stationed here. There are jars of oil, perhaps a barrel of sour wine, and tools, shovels, pickaxes, saws, leaning in the corner. These tools are as important as the swords and spears. The soldiers here are builders and laborers first, warriors second. Their war is against entropy, against the rot of wood and the crumbling of stone. They spend their days repairing the roof, clearing the ditch of debris, and patching the road that runs past the tower. A wooden ladder leads up to the next level. The rungs are polished smooth by the friction of countless hands and hobnailed boots climbing up and down. The wood groans softly under weight, a familiar creak that echoes in the small space. On the second floor, the living quarters are cramped. There is a hearth in the center, or perhaps a brazier filled with glowing coals, providing a meager warmth that barely reaches the corners of the room. The smoke drifts up, escaping through a vent in the roof or simply filtering out through the eaves. Here, the soldiers sleep. Their beds are simple pallets, stuffed with straw or bracken, covered with heavy wool blankets that are scratchy but warm. Personal belongings are few: a small chest for a tunic, a leather pouch with a few coins, a set of dice carved from bone. The life here is one of extreme routine. Wake, eat, stand watch, repair, eat, sleep. The days blend into one another, marked only by the changing of the seasons and the rotation of duties. Above this, on the top floor, is the observation platform. This is the eyes of the system. A soldier stands here, wrapped in a thick cloak, the wool pulled tight around his shoulders against the biting wind. He leans against the wooden railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He is not looking for a massive army. He is looking for small things: a plume of smoke where there should be none, a movement in the underbrush that is too rhythmic to be a deer, a flash of light reflecting off metal. The view from here is expansive. To the north, the land rolls away, untamed and ancient. Dense forests of oak and beech stretch out like a dark ocean, their canopy unbroken for miles. In the distance, mist clings to the valleys, obscuring the ground, making the trees look as if they are floating. It is a landscape of shadows and secrets. To the south, behind the tower, the view is different. Here, there is order. You can see the road, straight and paved, cutting through the fields. You can see the smoke rising from a distant farmstead, a villa where the roof tiles gleam a dull red. You can see the next watchtower in the line, a tiny speck in the distance, and beyond that, another. This visual connection is crucial. These towers are not isolated islands. They are knots in a net. If the soldier sees something, he does not fight alone. He signals. During the day, he might use smoke. A pile of damp straw is kept ready, which, when lit, produces a thick white column that rises straight up in the still air. The soldier in the next tower sees this white pillar against the dark forest. He lights his own fire. The signal jumps from tower to tower, traversing miles and minutes, a silent telegraph carrying a message of warning back to the larger forts, where the main strength of the legion resides. At night, The smoke is useless, so they use fire. A torch is lit and held aloft, or a beacon fire is kindled in an iron basket on the roof. The flame flickers, a bright orange star in the black void. It is a comforting sight to the men in the next tower, a reminder that they are not truly alone in the dark. The chain of light binds them together, a luminous thread stitching the frontier into a coherent whole. But most of the time, there is no signal. There is no smoke, no fire, no enemy. There is only the long, slow passage of time. The sun rises, tracing a low arc across the pale sky. The shadows lengthen, stretching out from the base of the tower like long, dark fingers. The birds call from the forest edge. A raven's croak, the trill of a thrush. Sounds that emphasize the quiet rather than breaking it. Let us descend from the tower now and walk along the line. Connecting these watchtowers in many places was not just open ground, but a physical barrier. In some regions, this was a palisade of wood, vast forests felled to create a wall of timber. But in the most famous sections, like the Great Wall in northern Britain, it was stone, miles and miles of stone. Imagine walking beside this wall. It stands perhaps 15 feet high, a vertical cliff face engineered by human hands. The stones are squared, dressed by masons who worked with a rhythmic chipping sound that must have echoed across the hills for years during its construction. The face of the wall is flat, offering no handhold, no foothold. It is a screen, blocking the view of the north, a psychological barrier as much as a physical one. To those on the south side, the wall says, "Here is safety. Here is Rome." To those on the north, it says, "Here is the end. Go no further." Walking along the base of this great stone barrier, you begin to notice the details that vanish from a distance. The wall is not a single, uniform slab of gray. It is a mosaic of geology. Here is a block of sandstone, honey-colored and coarse, its surface pitted by centuries of rain. Next to it is a block of limestone, harder, cooler, perhaps bearing the faint, fossilized imprint of a shell from an ocean that vanished millions of years before Rome was even a thought. The stones are covered in a slow, creeping skin of biology. Patches of lichen spread across the rock face like dried paint, circles of pale green, bright orange, and mustard yellow. In the crevices where the mortar has crumbled away, tufts of moss have taken hold, soft cushions of velvet green that drink in the moisture of the mist. At the foot of the wall, the grass grows long and wiry, untended by grazing animals. Thistles and brambles coil near the stonework, their thorns catching on the wool of your cloak as you pass. There is a smell here of wet stone, a mineral scent, cold and clean, mixed with the earthy odor of peat and damp soil. The wind strikes the face of the wall and is deflected upwards, creating a strange pocket of stillness right at the base. A quiet corridor running endlessly to the east and to the west. As we continue our walk, the rhythm of the defense reveals itself. Every so often, the monotony of the wall is broken. We approach a structure that bulges out from the line of stone. It is a mile castle. As the name implies, these small fortresses were placed with rigorous precision, exactly 1 Roman mile apart, regardless of the terrain. Whether the land rose into a steep crag or dipped into a boggy marsh, the engineers insisted on this spacing. Order was paramount. The mile castle is like a miniature version of the great forts we will see later. It is a rectangular enclosure attached to the back of the wall. Its walls are thick, built of the same dressed stone, rising up to meet the height of the main barrier. As we draw closer, we see the heavy wooden gates. There are 2 sets, one opening north into the wild barbarian lands, and one opening south into the province. Let us step through the southern gate. The wood is dark, seasoned oak, studded with iron nails that have rusted to a dull orange. The hinges are massive blocks of iron, greased with animal fat to prevent them from seizing up in the damp air. Inside the enclosure, the ground is paved with cobblestones, worn smooth and slick with mud. The space is small, intimate, and functional. It is not a place for a legion. It is a place for a handful of men, perhaps 20 or 30 soldiers detached from the main garrison. To the left and right of the central path stand 2 small barracks blocks. They are simple, low buildings with sloping roofs covered in slate or wooden shingles. Rainwater drips from the eaves into stone gutters that run along the ground, channeling the water away to keep the courtyard from becoming a quagmire. Smoke rises lazily from the chimneys, drifting across the enclosure before being snatched away by the breeze. Life in the Mile Castle is a life of waiting and watching, but also of administration. The northern gate is not sealed shut forever. It is a membrane. People pass through. Local traders, farmers moving livestock, envoys from northern tribes. The soldiers here are not just guards. They are customs officers. Picture a soldier standing by the open northern gate on a Tuesday morning. The sky is white with clouds. A cart approaches, pulled by 2 shaggy oxen, their breath steaming in the cold air. The driver is a local man, dressed in trousers and a tunic, speaking a dialect that is a mix of Latin and the native tongue. The soldier checks the cart. He looks under the skins being transported. He pokes a spear into a basket of wool. He checks the man's wooden tablets, his permissions to cross the frontier. There is a dull, bureaucratic rhythm to it. Stamps are checked. Tally marks are scratched into wax. Tolls are collected. A few copper coins changing hands, clinking softly. Then the heavy gate creaks, perhaps opening just wide enough for the cart to pass, before thudding shut again. The bar is dropped back into place. The silence returns. The soldier goes back to his post, leaning on his spear, staring out at the empty hills until the next traveler appears. Inside the barracks, the off-duty soldiers engage in the slow tasks of maintenance. We might see a man sitting on a bench under the eaves, sharpening his sword. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The whetstone glides along the iron blade in a hypnotic, repetitive motion. He tests the edge with his thumb, then continues. Scritch, scritch. Another soldier is mending a leather sandal. The hobnails on the sole have worn down or popped out. He uses a small hammer to tap new iron studs into the thick leather. Tap, tap, tap. These small, rhythmic sounds are the heartbeat of the Mile Castle. They are sounds of preservation, of keeping things functional in a place that is hard on materials. The air inside the barracks is thick and warm. A fire burns in a central hearth. The walls are plastered and perhaps painted with simple geometric designs in red and yellow ochre. An attempt to bring a touch of civilization, a memory of a Mediterranean villa, to this cold, northern outpost. The men sit around the fire, playing a board game. Ludus Latrunculorum, the game of mercenaries. They move small glass counters across a grid scratched into a stone slab. There is little talk. They know each other's stories. They have heard the same jokes 100 times. They play in silence. The only sound the click of the glass pieces and the shifting of the logs in the fire. Leaving the Mile Castle through the south gate, we find ourselves on the military way. This is a dedicated road that runs parallel to the wall, connecting all the Mile Castles and forts. It is a lifeline. Without this road, the wall is nothing but a pile of stones. The road allows for lateral movement. It is paved with tightly packed gravel and small stones, cambered in the center so that rain runs off into ditches on either side. Walking along this road, the wall is always there on your left, a constant gray companion. To your right, the land of the province slopes away. You might see the vallum. This was another element of the defense system, strange and colossal. It is a massive earthwork, a wide, flat-bottomed ditch flanked by 2 mounds of earth. It runs parallel to the wall, creating a secure zone between the military frontier and the civilian world. The vallum says to the civilians, "Keep back." This strip of land belongs to the army. It is a zone of exclusion, a grassy scar cut across the island. The wind picks up as we walk along the military way. The grass on the vallum mounds ripples in waves, looking like a green sea. We are moving toward something larger now. In the distance, rising from the landscape, is a shape more substantial than the mile castles. It is a rectangular plateau of stone, a city in miniature, surrounded by its own defensive walls. It is a fort. These forts were the anchors of the frontier, while the watchtowers were the eyes and the mile castles were the checkpoints. The forts were the muscles. A cohort of 500 or even 800 men would be stationed here. As we approach, the scale of the construction becomes apparent. The walls of the fort are higher and thicker than the mile castles. The corners are rounded, a specific Roman design choice. Sharp corners are weak points. They can be battered down or undermined. A rounded corner deflects blows and offers a better field of fire for the defenders on the walls. We approach the main gate of the fort, the Porta Praetoria. It is a grand structure, flanked by 2 towering guard chambers built of massive stone blocks. Above the arched gateway, there is an inscription slab. The letters are deeply carved, painted in red lead to stand out against the gray stone. It proclaims the name of the emperor under whose reign the fort was built, the name of the unit stationed here, and the governor who dedicated it. It is a stamp of authority, a declaration that this patch of mud and heather is now and forever property of Rome. The gates themselves are open during the day, but guarded heavily. Sentries stand at attention, their armor polished, the metal dull under the overcast sky. We pass between them, our footsteps echoing in the stone tunnel of the gatehouse. We emerge into the Via Praetoria, the main street of the fort. The noise level changes here. It is not the silence of the watchtower, nor the quiet murmur of the mile castle. It is a low hum of activity, but it is an orderly hum. There is no shouting, no chaotic market cries. It is the sound of a machine at work. We hear the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer from the fabrica, the workshop. We hear the clip-clop of horses' hooves on the paving stones. We hear the distant, synchronized chanting of men drilling on the parade ground. The layout of the fort is predictable. If you have seen one Roman fort, you have seen them all. A soldier could be transferred from the burning sands of Syria to the rainy hills of Britain, and, upon walking into the fort, he would know exactly where everything was. He would know where to sleep, where to eat, where the commander lived, and where the gods were kept. This standardization was the genius of the system. It reduced the cognitive load. It made the empire modular. To our left and right are the barracks blocks, long, narrow buildings facing each other in pairs. We will explore these later, for they are the home of the soldiers. But straight ahead, at the very center of the fort, stands the Principia, the headquarters building. It is the brain of the fortress. It is grander than the other buildings, perhaps featuring a colonnaded entrance. Let us walk towards the Principia. The stones of the street are worn into grooves by the iron-rimmed wheels of carts that have delivered grain and supplies for decades. Puddles of water reflect the gray sky in these ruts. The air smells of wood smoke, roasted meat from the cookhouses, and the pungent ammonia scent of the stables. It is a living, breathing settlement, entirely self-contained, an island of Mediterranean order imposed on a wild landscape. Stepping through the entrance of the Principia, the noise of the fort falls away, replaced by a respectful hush. We find ourselves in an open courtyard, the atrium. It is surrounded on three sides by a covered colonnade. The columns here are not marble brought from Italy. That would be too expensive and impractical. Instead, they are sturdy oak posts, or perhaps stone columns plastered and painted to look like marble. The effect is convincing enough from a distance, a touch of imperial grandeur in a rugged land. The ground of the courtyard is spread with clean gravel, raked into neat patterns that are disturbed only by the footsteps of messengers. In the center of this courtyard, open to the sky, there might be a statue of the emperor, bronze or stone, looking sternly towards the entrance. Rainwater from the roofs is channeled into a large stone basin or a cistern here, the water dark and still, reflecting the clouds drifting overhead. It is a space of transition, a buffer between the bustling streets outside and the serious business conducted within. Crossing the courtyard, we enter the great cross hall, the basilica. This is a vast, roofed space that spans the width of the building. It is high, much higher than the barracks. If you look up, you can see the heavy timber trusses that support the roof, darkened by age and smoke from the braziers that heat the hall in winter. High up, clear-story windows let in shafts of pale light that cut through the gloom, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The floor is paved with large flagstones. Your footsteps echo sharply here. Clack, clack, clack. A sound that emphasizes the vastness of the room. At one end of the hall stands a raised wooden platform, the tribunal. This is where the commander sits to dispense justice, to hear grievances, and to address the officers. It is empty now, the wooden chair waiting, silent and imposing. Behind the cross hall lies a row of 5 rooms. The central one is the most important room in the entire fort, the Sacellum, the shrine of the standards. There are no doors here. The front is open to the hall, perhaps guarded by a low metal screen. Inside, the air is heavy with the scent of incense and beeswax. The floor is raised slightly, signifying the sanctity of the space. Here, standing in racks against the back wall, are the standards of the unit. These are not just flags. They are the soul of the cohort. Tall poles plated with silver and gold, topped with intricate metalwork. A hand, a wreath, perhaps an animal totem like a boar or a bull. They gleam in the flickering light of oil lamps that burn day and night. To lose these standards is the ultimate disgrace. To guard them is the highest honor. The metal is polished daily, rubbed with soft cloths, until it mirrors the faces of the soldiers who tend to it. Beneath the shrine, often hidden under a trap door or a stone slab, lies the aerarium, the strong room. This is a small, subterranean chamber, cold and dry. It is here that the soldiers' savings are kept. Sacks of silver denarii are stacked in iron-bound chests. The pay for the entire garrison is stored here. The standards above protect the gold below, a practical fusion of religion and finance. The gods guard the money, and the soldiers guard the gods. Flanking the shrine are the offices, the officiatae. This is the bureaucratic engine of the fort. If we peek inside one of these rooms, we see a different kind of soldier. These men are not wearing armor. They sit at wooden desks, hunched over wax tablets and sheets of papyrus. The room smells of iron gall ink, pine resin, and the musty odor of old parchment. The shelves lining the walls are packed with records. Rotuli, scrolls, stacked in pigeonholes. Every aspect of the fort's life is recorded here. The morning reports. How many men are sick? How many are on patrol? How many are repairing the walls? The supply rosters. How many bushels of grain arrived? How many amphorae of oil? How many nails were used by the blacksmith? The duty rosters. Who stands watch tonight? Who cleans the latrines? Who has permission to visit the bathhouse? It is a world of lists. A clerk dips his reed pen into an inkwell, the scratch of the nib on the papyrus the only sound in the room. He is writing a letter for the commander, or perhaps updating the personnel files. A soldier's name is written, his age, his years of service, his next of kin. When a man retires or dies, a line is drawn through his name, a final bureaucratic gesture closing the book on a life of service. This paperwork is as relentless as the rain outside. The empire runs on ink as much as it runs on blood. Leaving the hushed atmosphere of the Principia, we step back out into the Via Principalis. The air feels fresher here. We turn towards another massive building, one that dominates the skyline of the fort almost as much as the headquarters. The Horea, the granaries. Food is the fuel of the army, and the granaries are designed to protect it at all costs. From the outside, the building looks like a fortress within a fortress. The walls are thick stone, supported by heavy external buttresses that look like stone ribs sticking out at regular intervals. These buttresses are necessary to support the immense weight of the roof and the outward pressure of the grain stored inside. There are no windows low down. The only openings are narrow ventilation slits high up under the eaves. These are designed to let air circulate, to keep the grain cool and dry, preventing mold and spontaneous combustion. The air moving through these vents creates a low whistling sound when the wind is high. Let us enter through the heavy loading doors. The first thing you notice is the floor. It is not on the ground. We have to step up onto a wooden platform. If you look down through the gaps in the floorboards, you can see that the entire floor is suspended on low stone pillars or dwarf walls. There is a dark, empty space beneath us. This is the suspensura. Its purpose is to isolate the grain from the damp earth rising from the ground and to allow air to flow underneath. It also serves a second purpose. It keeps the rats out, or at least it tries to. Inside, the granary is dim and cool. It smells intensely of dry wheat and barley, a dusty, golden smell that tickles the back of the throat. The space is divided into bins by wooden partitions. Mountains of grain are piled high here, enough to feed the garrison for a year or more. A siege could last through the deepest winter, and the men would still have bread. A supply officer walks along the central aisle. He carries a long wooden pole with markings on it. He stops at a bin, plunges the pole into the grain, and pulls it out, checking the level. He notes it down on a tablet. He scoops up a handful of wheat, letting the kernels run through his fingers. He is checking for weevils, for dampness, for rot. The grain makes a soft shh sound as it cascades back onto the pile, like the sound of distant surf. In the corner, there are sacks of other staples. Lentils, beans, perhaps salt pork, packed in barrels of brine. The granary is a testament to logistics. It represents the long arm of Rome, reaching out to fetch supplies from fertile provinces far away and depositing them here on the edge of the wilderness. Outside the granary, a cart is being unloaded. 2 soldiers heave a heavy sack off the back. They grunt with the effort, their boots slipping slightly on the wet stones. They carry it inside, their breath visible in the cool air. The work is heavy, repetitive, and endless. As soon as one sack is stored, another takes its place. The granary must always be full. The fear of hunger is a ghost that must be kept at bay with stone walls and raised floors. Leaving the scent of grain behind, we move deeper into the fort, towards the areas that pulse with a more visceral energy. We are heading for the workshops, the fabrica. Even before we arrive, the sounds announce its purpose. The rhythmic ringing of metal on metal, the hiss of steam, the rasp of a saw cutting through hardwood. The workshop is a long, low building, its large doors thrown open to let out the heat and smoke. Inside, it is a cavern of industry. On one side, the blacksmiths are at work. The forge fire glows a fierce orange in the dim light, fed by charcoal that is piled in a corner. A bellows boy pumps the handle of the large leather bellows. Whoosh, 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 forcing air into the heart of the fire, making the coals dance and spark. The blacksmith, a burly man with soot-stained arms and a leather apron, uses long tongs to pull a piece of iron from the fire. The metal glows a dull cherry red. He places it on the anvil. Clang. The hammer strikes. Clang. Sparks fly like tiny meteors, dying as they hit the dirt floor. He's not making a sword. Swords are made in specialized imperial factories. He is making nails, hundreds of them. Or perhaps he is repairing a broken hinge or straightening a bent spearhead. It is the work of maintenance, of keeping the iron skeleton of the army from rusting away. Further down the room, the scent changes from burning charcoal to fresh sawdust. Here, the carpenters are working. The floor is covered in a soft carpet of wood shavings, curling like ribbons. A soldier is planing a piece of ash wood, creating a new handle for a shovel. Swish, swish. The plane takes off thin, translucent strips of wood, revealing the clean, pale grain underneath. Another man is repairing a cartwheel, fitting a new spoke into the hub with precise mallet taps. Thock, thock, thock. There is a sense of calm competence here. These men are craftsmen. They take pride in a smooth join, a sharp edge, a solid weld. The workshop is a place of creation in a world built for destruction. Tools hang on the walls in neat rows. Chisels, augers, draw knives, each with its specific place. The order of the Legion extends even to the arrangement of a workbench. Exiting the fabrica, we cross a narrow alleyway. The ground is muddy here, churned up by the constant traffic. We are approaching the barracks, the centuria. This is where the soldiers live, sleep, and spend the vast majority of their time. The barracks blocks are long, narrow buildings, repeated in parallel rows. Let us enter one. We step onto a veranda that runs the length of the building, providing shelter from the rain for the men cleaning their kit outside. The building is divided into a series of two-room suites known as contubernia. Each suite houses 8 men, a contubernium, the smallest unit of the Roman army. These 8 men live together, eat together, and fight together. They are closer than brothers. We duck through a low doorway into the first room of a suite. This is the outer room, used for storage. It is cluttered and smells of leather, oil, and damp wool. Armor hangs on pegs on the walls, chainmail shirts, lorica hamata, that look like heavy gray fabric, or the famous segmented plate armor, lorica segmentata, the iron strips gleaming dully. Helmets with their cheek guards and neck protectors sit on shelves. Shields, oval or rectangular, are stacked against the wall, their painted surfaces covered in canvas covers to protect them from the damp. There is a small hearth here, or a portable brazier, where the men cook their meals. The Roman army does not have a central mess hall. These 8 men draw their grain ration and cook it themselves. A pot of porridge, pulls, bubbles gently over the coals, flavored perhaps with a bit of bacon fat or wild garlic gathered from the hills. We pass through to the inner room. This is the sleeping quarter. It is small, perhaps only 10 feet by 10 feet. There are bunk beds arranged against the walls, wooden frames with rope webbing supporting mattresses stuffed with straw. It is tight. Personal space is non-existent. At night, with the door closed, the air would be thick with the sound of breathing, snoring, and the smell of 8 bodies. But right now, the room is empty, save for one soldier who is exempted from duty today. He sits on his bunk, polishing his belt buckle with a piece of rag and fine sand. He rubs it in small circles, over and over, until the bronze shines like gold. He hums a quiet tune, a song from his homeland, perhaps somewhere in Gaul or Thrace. The walls of the room are plastered, and graffiti has been scratched into the surface. Names, crude drawings of gladiators, tally marks counting down the days to something. Payday, leave, the end of service. Outside the barracks, at the end of the block, is a larger suite of rooms. This is the centurion's quarters. The commander of the 80 men lives here. His space is more generous. He has a proper office, a bedroom, perhaps even a latrine of his own. He might have a slave or 2 to attend to him. The proximity is intentional. The officer lives with his men, hears them through the wall, knows their moods. Discipline is maintained not just by rules, but by presence. We leave the barracks and head towards the perimeter of the fort. There is a wide, open space between the back of the buildings and the defensive wall, known as the intervallum. This road allows troops to move quickly to any point on the defenses without having to navigate the narrow alleys between the barracks. It is also a safety zone. Missiles thrown over the wall by an enemy would land here, rather than hitting the wooden roofs of the buildings. Here, near the wall, we find the communal latrines. It may seem a strange place to visit, but sanitation was a cornerstone of Roman military life. The building is built against the rampart. Inside, there is a stone bench running along 3 walls, with keyhole-shaped openings cut into it. It is a social space. There are no partitions. Soldiers sit side by side, chatting, exchanging rumors, complaining about the weather or the centurion. In front of the bench, a channel of clean water runs continuously, used for washing sponges attached to sticks, the Roman equivalent of toilet paper. Below the bench, a deeper channel flushes the waste away, carrying it out through the fort walls and into a drain or river. The sound of running water is constant here, a soothing, bubbling noise that masks the other sounds. The air is kept surprisingly fresh by the constant flow of water and perhaps by bundles of fragrant herbs hung from the rafters. Finally, we climb the earthen rampart that backs the stone wall of the fort. We walk up a sloping ramp of turf, feeling the springy grass under our feet. We emerge onto the wall walk, the parapet. The wind hits us here, unobstructed. We are 15 feet up, looking out over the landscape. To our left and right, the crenellations of the wall, the battlements, frame the view like stone teeth. A sentry walks slowly towards us. He wears a heavy woolen cloak, the panula, hooded and fastened with a brooch. He carries a spear, leaning it against his shoulder. He nods as he passes, his eyes scanning the horizon. From up here, the fort looks like a grid, a perfect geometric pattern stamped into the earth. We see the smoke rising from the barracks, the slate roofs glistening, the orderly movement of men. But turn around, and you face the limes, the frontier. The land beyond the fort is cleared of trees for a few hundred yards, a kill zone where no enemy can approach unseen. Beyond that, the scrub begins, then the woods, dark and impenetrable. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows that stretch from the tree line towards the fort. The world is turning blue and gray. The distinction between the safety of the fort and the danger of the wild is sharp and absolute. We are standing on the edge of the known world, and as the light fades, the walls seem to grow taller, huddling the men inside against the encroaching night. As the light fails completely, a trumpet sounds from the center of the fort. It is a long, mournful note, the bucina, signaling the end of the working day and the closing of the gates. This is a ritual performed with religious strictness. Down below, at the main gate, the heavy wooden doors are swung shut. They move on iron pivots, groaning with a deep, resonant vibration that can be felt through the soles of your feet. The large timber bar is lifted by two men and dropped into its brackets. Thud. The sound is final. It marks the separation of the interior world from the exterior. For the next 8 hours, until the sun rises, the fort is a sealed vessel. The only way in or out is through the wicket gate, a small door cut into the main timber, and that only opens for the password. But not all life stops with the closing of the gates. In fact, for many soldiers coming off duty, the day ends with a visit to one of the most important structures in the entire military complex. To find it, we must mentally step outside the walls again, perhaps earlier in the day before the gates were barred. Just beyond the defensive ditches, often located near a stream or river, stands the balnea, the bathhouse. It seems contradictory to find such a complex piece of engineering on a rugged frontier, but for the Roman soldier, the bath was not a luxury. It was a necessity. It was a matter of hygiene, health, and morale. The building is low and squat, built of stone and brick, with a roof of red tiles. Even from the outside, you can see the heat radiating from it. Smoke drifts from a furnace room at the back, and the windows are small, glazed with thick, greenish glass to keep the warmth in. Let us enter. We pass through a heavy door into the apoditerium, the changing room. The air here is lukewarm, a gentle transition from the outside chill. Stone benches line the walls, and above them are niches, cubby holes, where men stow their tunics, cloaks, and boots. The floor is paved with mosaic, small cubes of black and white stone laid in geometric patterns, or perhaps depicting sea creatures, dolphins, tridents, fish. It feels cool and smooth under bare feet. The room is quiet, save for the rustle of cloth and the murmur of low voices. Soldiers are stripping off the layers of wool and leather, shedding the weight of their armor. The smell here is distinct, a mix of olive oil, sweat, and the faint, sulphurous scent of the furnace. From the changing room, we move into the tepidarium, the warm room. The temperature rises noticeably. It is not hot, but comfortably warm, like a summer afternoon. There are no pools here, just benches. The purpose of this room is to acclimatize the body, to prepare the pores for what is to come. Soldiers sit here, rubbing oil onto their skin from small clay flasks. The oil glistens in the lamplight, softening skin that has been chafed by armor and wind. Beneath the floor of this room lies the secret of the Roman bath, the hypocaust system. If we could see through the mosaic floor, we would see that we are walking on a suspended surface. The floor rests on pillars of stacked tiles, pilae, standing about 2 feet high. Hot air and smoke from the furnace outside are drawn into this space, circulating around the pillars, heating the floor from below. The heat rises through the stone, warming the feet first, then the room. Flue tiles built into the walls carry the hot air up to the roof, creating a cocoon of radiant heat. After the body has warmed, we move to the heart of the bathhouse, the caldarium, the hot room. The heavy wooden door opens with a rush of steam. The heat here is intense, heavy, and wet. It hits you like a physical weight, instantly relaxing tense muscles. The air is thick with moisture. Visibility is low. Figures appear as silhouettes in the mist. At one end of the room is the alveus, a hot plunge bath. The water is heated by a boiler directly over the furnace. Soldiers submerge themselves up to their chins, the hot water soothing aches from the long march or the hard labor of wall building. The sound of water splashing, the deep exhales of relief, and the dripping of condensation from the vaulted ceiling create a hypnotic soundscape. Drip, drip, splash. Here the cleaning happens. Romans do not use soap. Instead, they use the oil they applied earlier. A soldier takes a strigil, a curved metal tool usually made of bronze. He presses the edge against his skin and scrapes. The strigil removes the oil, and with it, the dirt and sweat. It makes a rhythmic scraping sound against the skin. Shk, shk, shk. The mixture of oil and dirt is flicked onto the floor to be washed away by slaves later. The heat of the caldarium opens the pores completely. The body sweats profusely, purging the toxins of the frontier. It is a place of total surrender to the element of heat. For a soldier stationed in a cold, rainy province, this room is a memory of the Mediterranean sun. It is a psychological escape as much as a physical one. Once the heat has done its work, the process must be reversed. We leave the steam and heat moving back through the warm room and enter the frigidarium, the cold room. This room is unheated. In the center is a pool of cold water. The transition is a shock. The soldier steps into the cold water, submerging quickly. Splash. The cold closes the pores instantly. It invigorates the system, waking up the mind. The skin tingles. It is a sharp, clarifying moment after the lethargy of the steam. Dried with coarse linen towels, the soldiers dress again. They feel lighter, cleaner. The grime of the patrol is gone. They step back out into the evening air, which now feels less biting. The bathhouse is an engine of civilization, a complex machine of fire, water, and air that maintains the Roman body in a hostile environment. Adjacent to the fort and the bathhouse, a different kind of community often grows. This is the vicus, the civilian settlement. We should take a quiet walk through its narrow streets as the night settles in. The vicus is not planned with the rigid geometry of the fort. It is organic, messy, and alive. Here live the people who support the army and those who depend on it. Merchants, craftsmen, innkeepers, wives, and children. The houses are simple, timber framed with wattle and daub walls, long and narrow strips of land stretching back from the road. The roofs are thatch or shingle. At this hour, the vicus is glowing with the light of oil lamps and hearth fires spilling from open doorways. We pass a tavern, a capona. Inside, the air is smoky and loud. Soldiers who have permission to be out of the barracks are here, drinking sour wine or local beer. They are rolling dice, shouting over the noise. It is a place of release. The innkeeper, perhaps a veteran who retired and stayed near his old unit, pours drinks from a large ceramic jug. Further down the street, the sounds are domestic. A baby crying. A mother singing a lullaby in a language that might be German, or verify Gaulish, or a local dialect. The smell of cooking, stews, baking bread, drifts from the houses. The vicus represents the shadow of the army. Where the legions go, a town follows. These settlements are often the seeds of future cities, but for now, they are precarious, clinging to the walls of the fort for protection. The relationship between the fort and the vicus is symbiotic. The soldiers spend their pay here, buying pottery, leather goods, extra food, and entertainment. The civilians provide the comforts that the army cannot. But the line is clear. When the trumpet sounds for an alarm, the soldiers run to the fort, and the civilians look to the walls, hoping they are high enough. Let us return to the shadow of the fort walls. The night has truly set in now. The moon is hidden behind the thick cloud cover, making the darkness absolute. The only light comes from the torches on the gate towers, flickering in the wind. We are going to look at one final element of the defensive line before we move further out. We have seen the wall, the towers, the mile castles, and the forts. But connecting them all is the ditch system, the fossa. It is easy to overlook a hole in the ground, yet the ditch is often the most lethal part of the defense. Walking carefully in the dark near the walls, we can sense the drop in the ground. The Roman military ditch is not just a trench, it is a V shape, often cut to a specific angle, the ankle breaker. At the bottom, there is often a square channel, the cleaning slot, designed to help shovel out mud. But hidden in that mud, or sometimes planted on the slopes, are obstacles. The sipi. These are pits containing sharpened branches hidden among the brambles, or the lilia, lilies, which sounds beautiful, but is deadly. These are pits arranged in a quincunx pattern, like the 5 on a die, each containing a sharp stake hardened by fire. They are covered with brushwood and leaves. An enemy charging the walls in the dark would not see them. He would step onto the brushwood and fall, his foot impaled. These silent traps lie waiting in the dark, a zone of denial that requires no soldiers to man it, only the patience of the earth and the sharpness of the wood. They are the passive defenders, the sleepless guardians of the perimeter, standing on the wall walk, looking down into that pitch-black darkness where the ditches lie. The concept of time begins to dissolve. For the sentry on duty, the night is not measured in hours, but in the slow rotation of the stars and the numbing of the extremities. The Roman night watch is divided into 4 shifts, known as vigiliae. The first watch begins at sunset, the second at midnight, and so on until dawn. Standing here in the third watch, the deepest part of the night, the silence is heavy. It presses against the ears. The soldier leans on his scutum, his large shield resting his chin on the rim. The wood of the shield is cold and damp with dew. His breath forms a faint cloud that vanishes instantly in the breeze. He is not looking at anything specific because there is nothing to see. The landscape has become a void of varying shades of black. The forest is a solid wall of darkness. The sky is a slightly lighter shade of charcoal. Instead, he listens. The human ear becomes the primary instrument of defense. He learns the library of night sounds, the rustle of a badger in the dry grass of the ditch, safe. The hoot of a tawny owl from the oak trees, safe. The wind rattling the dry leaves of a scrub bush, safe. It is the sound that does not fit that he waits for. The snap of a twig that is too heavy to be a fox. The clink of metal against stone. The rhythm of footsteps that are trying not to be heard. But tonight, there is only the wind. It sighs around the stone battlements, a low, constant moan that has been heard by every soldier who has ever stood on a wall since the beginning of time. To stay awake, he might count. He counts the crenellations visible in the torchlight to his left. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counts the rivets on the inside of his shield. He recites the names of the emperors or the rivers of his homeland. It is a mental battle against the overwhelming urge to close his eyes, to sink down into the warmth of the cloak and sleep. But the penalty for sleeping on watch is severe, often death, or a beating by the entire cohort. So he stands. He shifts his weight from his left foot to his right. The hobnails of his sandals grate softly on the stone flagstones. Scrape, scrape. Suddenly, a light appears in the courtyard below. It is a lantern, swinging rhythmically. The relief squad is coming. The sound of marching feet is muffled, but distinct. The change of the guard is a precise ritual. The new sentries march up the steps, their armor clinking softly. They approach the post. The password is exchanged in a low whisper. Jupiter. Victor. The exchange is quick. The old sentry hands over his position, his body stiff from the cold. He descends the stairs, heading towards the warmth of the barracks and the heavy, dreamless sleep of the exhausted. The new sentry takes his place, adjusting his cloak, gripping his spear. The cycle resets. The watch begins again. This endless cycle of watching relies on one thing above all else: the durability of the structure they are standing on, the wall, the fort, the tower. They feel permanent, as if they grew out of the earth. But every single stone, every beam of timber, every roof tile represents a monumental effort of logistics and labor. To truly understand the defense system, we must look away from the soldiers and look at the materials. We must go back to the source. Let us travel a few miles south of the wall, into the hills. Here, the green turf has been stripped away to reveal the gray skeleton of the earth. This is the quarry. It is a place of dust, noise, and brute force. Even now, in our imagination, we can hear the clink, clink, clink of iron on stone that defines this space. The quarry face is a stepped amphitheater of rock. The Romans are methodical in their extraction. They do not hack wildly at the cliff. They read the stone. The master mason looks at the strata, the natural bedding planes of the rock. He knows exactly where to strike to make the earth yield. Watch the quarrymen at work. They are likely soldiers from the legion, men with thick arms and leather aprons, whitened by stone dust. They are cutting a block. First, they use a pick to cut a narrow trench around the desired shape, isolating the block from the surrounding mass. It is slow work. The pick strikes, chipping away a flake the size of a fingernail. Strike, chip, strike, chip. Thousands of strikes to go down just a few inches. Once the block is outlined, they must split it from the bedrock. They use a technique that is both simple and ingenious. Along the bottom line of the block, they chisel out a series of small, wedge-shaped holes. Into these holes, they drive iron wedges. Or, if they are patient and the weather is right, they use dry wooden wedges. Imagine the scene. A row of dry wooden wedges is hammered tight into the rock. Then, a soldier comes with a bucket of water. He pours the water over the wood. Now they wait. It is a slow, silent process. The wood drinks the water. The fibers expand. The pressure builds inside the stone, massive and irresistible. Hours pass. The sun moves across the sky. And then a sound, a sharp crack like a pistol shot. A fissure runs along the line of the wedges. The stone has split. The block is free. Now begins the movement. The block might weigh half a ton. It must be moved without modern machinery. Ropes are tied around it. Levers made of iron-shod oak are jammed underneath. "Heave," calls the Optio in charge. The men strain, their boots slipping in the dust. The stone grates and slides onto a sledge. This sledge is then dragged by oxen. The journey from the quarry to the building site is a slow, muddy ordeal. The wooden wheels of the heavy carts groan under the weight. The track is deeply rutted. In winter, It is a quagmire. In summer, a dust bath. The oxen plod forward, heads down, driven by the shout of the drover, one stone at a time, mile after mile. To build a wall that stretches for 70 or 80 miles, this journey had to be repeated millions of times. It is a staggering calculation of weight and distance. When the stone arrives at the construction site, the masons take over. The block from the quarry is rough, irregular. It must be dressed. This is the art of imposing geometry on nature. The mason stands at his bench, the stone block before him. He holds a chisel and a mallet. He begins to work the face of the stone. He is not trying to make it smooth like marble. He is trying to make it square. He taps the chisel, knocking off the rough protrusions. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm is steady, hypnotic. He works from the edges inward, creating a flat border or draft, and then leveling the center. Sometimes, to leave a decorative finish or to ensure the mortar grips better, he uses a toothed chisel. This leaves a pattern of small lines or diagonal hatching on the face of the stone. If you look closely at the walls of a Roman fort today, you can still see these marks. They are the signature of a man who died almost 2,000 years ago. You can see the angle at which he held his tool, the strength of his blow, and sometimes a mistake, a slip where the chisel went too deep. While the masons dress the wall stones, other specialists are at work on the timber. A defense system consumes a forest. Gates, towers, barracks, palisades, all require wood. The agrimensors, the land surveyors, would have designated areas of woodland for felling. Walk into the forest with the woodcutters. The air smells of pine resin and damp sap. The sound here is the rhythmic thwack of the axe. Felling a mature oak is a day's work for 2 men. The tree crashes down, tearing through the canopy. Then comes the limbing, stripping the branches, and the peeling of the bark. The white wood underneath is slippery and wet. These logs must be seasoned. Green wood warps and cracks. So great stacks of timber are piled up in the lumber yards near the forts, drying in the wind. The smell of seasoning wood is one of the defining scents of the frontier. It is the smell of potential structures. Back at the wall, the construction is a scene of organized chaos. Scaffolding made of poles and lashed with rope rises against the growing stone face. Ladders lean precariously. Buckets of mortar are hauled up on pulleys. Squeak, creak, squeak. The mortar is mixed in pits on the ground, lime, sand, and water. Men with hose churn the gray sludge, sweating as the chemical reaction of the lime releases heat. A mason on the scaffold calls for a stone. It is hoisted up. He guides it into place. He spreads a bed of mortar with his trowel. He lowers the block. He checks it with a plumb line, a simple lead weight on a string, to ensure it is perfectly vertical. Gravity is the only judge that matters. If the wall leans, it falls. He taps the stone with the handle of his trowel to settle it. Then he calls for the next one. Block by block, layer by layer, the wall rises. It covers the grass. It crosses the streams on small arched culverts. It climbs the crags. It is a relentless line of gray ink drawn across the map. But the defense is not just stone and wood. It is also communication. We spoke of the signals, but let us look closer at the mechanism of the Roman military telegraph. The systems were remarkably sophisticated. It wasn't just fire means danger. They had codes. Polybius, a historian, describes a system using 2 sets of 5 torches. By raising a specific combination of torches on the left and right, the soldiers could spell out letters of the alphabet. A soldier on a watchtower could literally write a message in the sky. Imagine the concentration required. It is a dark, moonless night. You are staring at a distant tower 3 miles away. A tiny point of light appears, then another. 2 lights on the left, 3 on the right. You consult your code table. That means a specific letter. You write it down on your wax tablet. The lights disappear. Then a new pattern appears. E, N, E, M, Y. The message spells out the threat, or perhaps it is more mundane. S, U, P, P, L, I, E, S. This optical telegraph relied entirely on line of sight. This is why the surveyors were so obsessed with placement. A watchtower had to see the next one. If a hill blocked the view, the system failed. So they cleared vast swathes of forest. They built intermediate relay stations. They bent the landscape to the will of the eye. There is a particular kind of silence that falls over the frontier when a signal is being sent. The men in the tower stop talking. All eyes are fixed on the distant spark. The wind seems to hold its breath. The fate of the province hangs on a flickering flame, and the literacy of a cold, tired soldier reading a message in the dark. The signal fire on the tower flickers and dies, the message received and logged. The immediate result is not always the clash of shields. Often it is simply the movement of resources. A wall is a static object, a line of stone that cannot move. But the defense of Rome is fluid. It relies on the ability to shift weight, to move men and material from a quiet sector to a threatened one. And for this, the empire relies on its greatest invisible weapon, the road. Behind the wall, running parallel to the fortifications, lies the Via Militaris, the military way. To the untrained eye, it is just a strip of hard ground. To the engineer, it is a masterpiece of layering. Let us kneel down and examine the anatomy of this road. It is not merely paved surface. It is a deep structure, anchored into the earth like the roots of a tree. First, the surveyors dug a wide trench, the fossa, removing the soft topsoil until they hit solid clay or bedrock. Into this trench, they laid the foundation, the statumen. These are large, heavy stones, hand-placed to form a solid base that will not shift under the weight of a legion. Above this comes the rudus, a thick layer of smaller stones mixed with lime or clay, rammed down tight to create a concrete-like mass. Then the nucleus, a layer of fine gravel and sand rolled smooth. Finally, the surface, the summum dorsum. In some places, it is paved with large polygonal slabs of basalt or limestone fitted together so tightly that a knife blade cannot pass between them. In the frontier zones, it is often a surface of tightly packed gravel, cambered, curved upwards in the center, so that the rain washes off into the drainage ditches on either side. Walking on this road is different from walking on the open ground. The surface is hard and unforgiving. Your boots strike it with a solid thud, thud, thud. There is no give. It is a surface built for speed and endurance, not for comfort. It allows a column of soldiers to march 20 miles in a day, regardless of the mud and mire of the surrounding fields. Listen to the sound of the road in the early morning mist. It is the sound of logistics. Long before the sun rises, the supply trains are moving. We hear the slow, rhythmic clop, clop of mules. The Roman army moves on the backs of mules. They are sturdy, sure-footed animals, each carrying perhaps 200 pounds of equipment. A train of 50 mules passes by. They are laden with leather panniers containing grain, iron ingots for the smithy, or perhaps amphorae of wine from the south. The drivers walk beside them, occasionally clicking their tongues or whistling softly to keep the animals moving. There is the creak of leather harnesses, the jingle of metal buckles, and the soft snorting of the beasts in the cold air. Behind the mules come the carts, the plaustra, heavy, two-wheeled ox carts. Their wheels are solid wood or heavy spokes, rimmed with iron tires. On the stone road, these iron tires make a loud, grinding rumble. Grrr, rumble, grrr, rumble. A sound that vibrates through the ground. They carry the heaviest loads: timber, stone blocks, barrels of salted pork. The oxen move slowly, their heads swaying, saliva dripping from their mouths in long, thick strands. The carts smell of grease, applied liberally to the wooden axles to stop them from catching fire from the friction. This river of supplies must never stop. A fort of 500 men is a hungry beast. It consumes tons of grain every month. This brings us to the most fundamental sound of the soldier's daily life, a sound even more common than the sharpening of swords, the grinding of the quern. Grain, usually wheat or barley, is issued to the soldiers raw. They do not receive loaves of bread, they receive sacks of corn. It is up to the contubernum, the 8-man tent group, to process it. Every barrack room has a mola manuaria, a hand mill. It consists of 2 circular stones, one on top of the other. The top stone has a wooden handle. Picture a soldier sitting on the floor of the barracks room. He pours a handful of grain into the hole in the center of the top stone. He grabs the handle and begins to turn. Grind, scrape, grind, scrape. Stone rubbing against stone, crushing the hard kernels into flour. It is slow, monotonous work. It takes perhaps an hour of grinding to produce enough flour for the group's daily bread. The flour is coarse, mixed with a little stone dust from the mill itself, which is why the teeth of older skulls found by archaeologists are often worn down flat. The soldier mixes the flour with water and a little salt, kneading it into a heavy dough on a wooden board. He shapes it into round, flat loaves. These are then baked in the turf ovens built into the back of the rampart, or on the hearth in the room. The smell of baking bread is the smell of safety. When the bread is ready, it is dense and chewy. They might dip it in olive oil, or, more likely on the frontier, use it to soak up a stew of lentils and bacon. This is the fuel of the empire. Not magic, not divine favor, but carbohydrates and protein, processed by hand in 1 million small rooms across the world. To wash it down, they drink posca. This is not the fine vintage wine of the aristocracy. It is a mixture of water and sour wine or vinegar. It sounds unappealing to modern palates, but it is practical. The acidity kills bacteria in the water, and it is thirst-quenching. It tastes sharp, biting the tongue, leaving a clean feeling in the mouth. It is the Gatorade of the ancient world, cheap to produce and easy to transport. Water, of course, is the other critical logistical challenge. A fort cannot survive a siege without it. The Romans were masters of hydraulic engineering, and they brought this skill to the wildest frontiers. If the fort is lucky, it is built over a natural spring. If not, the engineers must bring the water to the hill. They build aqueducts, not always the towering stone arches we see in pictures of Rome, but often underground channels or specus. These are trenches lined with stone and waterproof cement, covered with slabs of rock, bringing water from a source miles away. Inside the fort, the water is distributed through pipes made of lead or hollowed-out tree trunks joined with iron collars. Listen closely near the Principia or the bathhouse, and you might hear the faint gurgle of water rushing beneath the paving stones. The lead pipes, fistulae, are stamped with the name of the emperor and the plumber who made them. The water feeds the fountains, the latrines, the baths, and large stone cisterns, holding tanks kept in reserve for fires or droughts. The surface of the water in these underground cisterns is black and still, a mirror reflecting nothing until a bucket is lowered, shattering the calm with a splash. But despite the clean water, the good diet, and the baths, sickness is the constant shadow of the army. The frontier is a damp, cold place. Rheumatism, infected cuts, fevers, and broken bones are common. This necessitates another key building in the fort, the valetudinarium, the hospital. We find this building in a quiet corner of the fort, away from the noise of the workshops and the main gates. It is designed for peace. The architecture is specific. A rectangular building with a central courtyard. The rooms are arranged around this courtyard, opening onto a covered corridor. This layout reduces noise and allows fresh air and sunlight to reach every room. A primitive but effective form of infection control. Let us walk into the valetudinarium. The atmosphere changes immediately. The air is still and smells strongly of medicinal herbs, sage, rosemary, and the sharp tang of garlic, used as an antiseptic. It also smells of vinegar, used for cleaning wounds, and unwashed linen. The central courtyard is a garden of sorts. Medicinal plants are grown here, ready to be harvested by the medicus, the doctor. We see a soldier tending to the plants, carefully pruning a bush of wormwood. He moves with a gentle precision that contrasts with the rough drills on the parade ground. The wards are small rooms, each containing a few beds. The beds are simple wooden frames with straw mattresses, but the linen sheets are changed frequently. It is quiet here. We hear the low murmur of a feverish soldier tossing in his sleep. We hear the clink of a glass vessel as the doctor mixes a draught. The instruments of the Roman surgeon are laid out on a clean table. They are terrifyingly recognizable, yet beautiful in their craftsmanship. Bronze scalpels with interchangeable steel blades, bone levers, forceps for extracting arrowheads, probes for exploring the depth of a wound. They gleam in the light, clean and sharp. There is no anesthesia as we know it, only opium poppy juice, henbane, and copious amounts of wine. The surgery is quick and brutal, reliant on the speed of the doctor's hand. But here, in the quiet of the ward, the focus is on recovery. A soldier with a broken leg lies with his limb encased in a cast made of stiffened linen and egg white. He stares at the ceiling, counting the beams, waiting for the bone to knit. The valetudinarium is a place of waiting, much like the watchtower. But the enemy here is internal. It is the failing of the body. The silence is broken only by the sound of coughing or the soft tread of the orderly bringing a bowl of broth. It is a place where the humanity of the legion is most visible. Here, the soldier is not a unit of force, but a fragile biological machine that requires repair. Leaving the hospital, we step back into the thoroughfare. The contrast is stark. The noise of the fort returns, the shouting, the hammering, the marching. We have seen the walls that protect, the towers that watch, the roads that connect, and the hospitals that heal. But there is one more layer to this defensive onion, one that lies not in stone or wood, but in the mind of the soldier himself. Discipline. To understand this internal architecture, we must walk out of the fort gates again, past the bathhouse, past the civilian settlement, to a large, flat expanse of beaten earth known as the campus. The parade ground. This is a place where the grass has been stamped out of existence. The ground is hard, packed tight by the impact of millions of footsteps. It is a dusty, barren square, exposed to the wind and the rain. There is no cover here. This is the factory floor where the raw recruit is hammered into a component of the Roman machine. In the center of the field stands a row of wooden posts, the pali. They are simple tree trunks, sunk deep into the earth, standing about 6 feet high. They are scarred, splintered, and worn down. These silent wooden stumps are the enemies the soldiers fight every single day. Watch a line of recruits approaching the posts. They are not carrying their standard weapons. They are carrying the training kit. They hold shields made of wicker, woven like heavy baskets. These shields, the skuta, weigh twice as much as the standard combat shield. In their right hands, they hold wooden swords, roods, which are also weighted with lead to be double the weight of a real gladius. The logic is brutal and effective. If a man can fight with a heavy wooden club and a massive wicker shield until his arms scream with fatigue, the real steel weapons will feel light as feathers in his hands when the time comes. The drill instructor, the campadoctor, stands with a vine staff in his hand. He calls out the rhythm. The men step forward. Thud. They strike the post. Clack. They recover behind the shield. Whoosh. They thrust again. Clack. It is not a chaotic frenzy. It is a slow, deliberate choreography. The focus is on the thrust, not the slash. A slash with a sword requires a wide swing. It opens up the body, exposing the armpit or the side to the enemy. A thrust is economical. It requires only a few inches of movement. It is a piston-like action. The sound of the drill is hypnotic. Step, thrust, recover. Step, thrust, recover. Hundreds of men moving in unison. The dust rises from their feet, coating their legs, their tunics, their sweating faces. They are learning to ignore the burning in their shoulders. They are learning to ignore the boredom. They are building muscle memory, writing the code of combat into their very nervous systems so that when fear strikes, the body will move on its own, without conscious thought. They practice the formations. The most famous, the testudo or tortoise, is a masterpiece of geometric defense. The command is given. The front rank stands firm, holding their shields in front of them, edge to edge. The ranks behind them raise their shields over their heads, overlapping them like the scales of a reptile. The men on the flanks turn their shields outward. Suddenly, the unit is gone. In its place is a solid box of wood and leather. Inside the testudo, it is dark. The light of the sun is blocked out by the roof of shields. The air becomes close and warm. The soldiers are pressed shoulder to shoulder. They can hear the breathing of the man next to them, the creak of the wicker. They must walk blindly, guided only by the voice of the officer and the movement of the man in front. They shuffle forward. If stones or arrows were raining down, they would bounce harmlessly off the roof. To test the integrity of the formation, the instructor might climb up onto the shields and walk across the top of the men, stomping his boots to check for weak spots. The structure must hold. The individual has vanished. Only the tortoise remains. But the campus is not just for weapon drills. It is for the march. The Roman soldier is often called a mule for a reason. His ability to walk is his primary weapon. A legion that can march 20 miles in 5 hours, build a fortified camp, and then fight a battle is unstoppable. So they practice the loaded march. This is known as the ambulatura. The soldier is loaded with his full kit, the sarcina. Let us catalog the weight he bears. First, the armor. The lorica segmentata, the iconic segmented plate armor, weighs about 20 pounds. It sits on the shoulders, the weight distributed by leather straps, but after an hour it begins to dig in. Then the helmet, the gallia, hanging from a strap on his chest or worn on the head. The shield, carried in a leather case on his back. The sword and the dagger. Then comes the furca, a T-shaped wooden pole carried over the shoulder. Hanging from this pole is his life support system, a bronze cooking pot, a mess tin, a leather satchel with 3 days' worth of grain, a flask of water or posca, a bag of personal items, spare tunic, socks, a razor, 2 stakes, pila muralia, for building the camp palisade, a pickaxe, or a turf cutter. In total, he is carrying perhaps 60 or 70 pounds of gear. And with this load, he walks. The sound of a century marching is a rhythmic, grinding roar. Crunch, 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 crunch. The hobnails on their boots, the callagi, bite into the gravel of the road. The iron studs provide grip, but they also create a distinctive sound that announces the presence of Rome long before the soldiers are seen. Imagine walking in the middle of this column. You are surrounded by the smell of sweat, oiled leather, and iron. Your vision is limited to the back of the helmet of the man in front of you. You watch the sway of his pack. You match your stride to his. If he slows, you slow. If he speeds up, you speed up. You are locked in a moving cage of rhythm. The mind wanders. You look at the roadside, a hawk circling in the sky, a farmer watching from a field, leaning on his hoe, the milestones passing by. Mile 5, mile 6, mile 7. The pain in the feet becomes a dull throb, then a numbness. The strap of the pack rubs a raw spot on the shoulder. You adjust the weight, shifting the pole to the other side. This marching is the true defense of the empire. It is the ability to project power. A wall is a line, but a marching legion is a mobile wall that can be deployed anywhere. The roads we discussed earlier were built for exactly this purpose, to facilitate this endless, grinding movement of heavy infantry. When the march ends, the work does not. This is the crucial difference between the Roman army and the barbarians they fought. When a barbarian army stops, they rest. When a Roman army stops, they build. Every single night, without exception, whether in friendly territory or deep in the enemy wilderness, the legion builds a fortified camp, the castra. It is a temporary city that exists for 12 hours and is then erased. The process is a miracle of organization. As soon as the site is chosen by the surveyors, the soldiers drop their packs and pick up their digging tools. They do not rest. They do not eat. They dig. A ditch is dug around the perimeter. The earth from the ditch is thrown inward to create a rampart. The stakes they carried on their backs are planted on top of the rampart and lashed together to form a palisade. Inside this perimeter, the tents are pitched in exactly the same pattern as the barracks in the permanent fort. The leather tents, papiliones, are heavy and smell of waterproofing tallow. Each 8-man group knows exactly where their tent goes. There is no confusion, no arguing over the best spot. The grid is sacred. Within 3 hours, a patch of empty scrubland has been transformed into a fortress with walls, streets, a headquarters, and a hospital tent. Smoke rises from hundreds of campfires as the men finally begin to cook their porridge. The sun sets. The sentries are posted on the new rampart. The password is exchanged. The soldier, exhausted from the march and the digging, crawls into his tent. He lies on the hard ground, wrapped in his cloak. The leather walls of the tent flap gently in the wind. He is safe. He has built his own safety with his own hands. The next morning, the trumpet sounds at dawn. The process reverses. Tents are struck and folded. Stakes are pulled up. The rampart might be leveled or left as a monument to their passing. The column forms up. The marching song begins. The hobnails hit the road. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They move on. This relentless mobility, combined with the static permanence of the stone walls, creates a paradox. Rome is everywhere and nowhere. It is a stone tower watching a silent forest, and it is a cloud of dust moving along a road. But let us return to the static defenses, to the wall itself, and examine the life of the men who are not marching, but watching. The specialized troops, the archers and the artillerymen, In the corner towers of the fort, or on platforms built into the walls, sit the machines of war. The ballista. It is a giant crossbow, but it does not use a bowstring in the traditional sense. It uses torsion. The power comes from two vertical bundles of twisted rope, made from hair, animal or human or sinew. These bundles act like massive springs. Rigid wooden arms are inserted into these twisted ropes. When the arms are pulled back by a winch, the ropes are twisted even tighter, storing an immense amount of potential energy. The machine is heavy, framed in iron and oak. It sits on a universal joint, allowing it to be swiveled left or right, up or down. A soldier, the ballistarius, tends to it. He is a specialist, a technician of tension. He checks the ropes. They must be kept dry. If they get wet, they lose their elasticity. He taps them with a small hammer, listening to the pitch. They must sing with the same note, indicating equal tension on both sides. If one is tighter than the other, the bolt will fly off course. He places a stone shot or a heavy iron-tipped bolt into the groove. He turns the winch. Click, click, click. The ratchet holds the tension. The arms are pulled back, the ropes screaming with stored power. He aims. He looks through the sights, lining up a tree stump or a target painted on a rock hundreds of yards away. He pulls the trigger mechanism. Thwack. The sound is sharp and sudden. The arms snap forward. The bolt is gone, moving too fast for the eye to follow. A split second later, the target shatters. These machines are the long-range deterrents. They allow the fort to project death well beyond the range of a hand-thrown spear. But most of the time, they sit silent, covered in canvas to protect them from the weather. The ballistarius spends his time greasing the winch, waxing the wood, and checking his supply of bolts. It is a relationship between a man and a complex machine, a precursor to the artillery crews of modern times. Alongside the artillery are the archers, the Sagittari. Often recruited from the east, Syria or Crete, these men bring a different skill set. They do not wear the heavy plate armor. They wear chainmail or scale armor, which is more flexible. They carry composite bows made of wood, horn, and sinew glued together. Stand next to an archer on the wall walk. The wind is his constant concern. He wets a finger and holds it up, testing the direction and speed. He looks at the flags fluttering on the gatehouse. He knows that an arrow is a light projectile. A gust of wind can push it feet off course. He practices loosing, not aiming at a specific man, but creating a zone of danger. He draws the bow to his ear. The recurve bow requires immense strength to hold at full draw. His back muscles bunch up. He releases. The string hums. The arrow arcs high into the air, reaching the apex of its flight, and then drops silently, accelerating as it falls. Imagine 1,000 arrows falling like rain. It is a suppressing fire. It forces the enemy to keep their heads down, to raise their shields, slowing their advance. The archer's war is one of angles and trajectories, of geometry played out in the air. But tonight, there are no targets. The ballista is covered. The bows are unstrung to rest the wood. The soldiers lean on the stonework, looking out at the same unchanging view. The discipline of the drill, the weight of the march, the tension of the artillery, it all culminates in this act of waiting. We move now from the silence of the wall to a place of constant, restless energy. In many forts, especially those housing a cohors equitata, a mixed unit of infantry and cavalry, a significant portion of the interior space is dedicated not to men, but to beasts. We are going to the stabula, the stables. You can smell the stables long before you see them. It is a pungent, earthy cocktail of ammonia, damp hay, leather, and horse sweat. To modern noses, it might be overpowering, but to the Roman soldier, it is a familiar, almost comforting scent. It smells of life. It smells of mobility. The stable blocks are long and narrow, much like the barracks. In fact, in some forts, the men and the horses live under the same roof, separated only by a wooden partition. The soldier sleeps on one side, listening to the breathing and shifting of his mount on the other. It creates a bond that is deeper than mere ownership. The horse is a partner, a weapon, and a companion. Let us walk down the central drain of the stable block. On either side are the stalls. These are not the roomy boxes of a modern riding school. They are narrow, standing stalls. The horses are smaller than modern breeds, sturdy, shaggy ponies, perhaps 14 hands high, akin to the Exmoor or Highland ponies of today. They are not built for speed. They are built for endurance. They can live on poor grass and survive the freezing winters. The floor of the stall is cobbled or paved with rough stone to prevent slipping. A layer of bracken or straw is spread to soak up the waste. A groom, or the cavalryman himself, is mucking out. The sound of the shovel scraping on stone, scrape, lift, toss, is rhythmic and constant. The manure is a valuable resource. It will be carted out to the gardens in the vicus, or used to fertilize the fields that supply the fort. Listen to the sounds of the stable at night. It is never truly quiet. A horse snorts, clearing dust from its nostrils. Another kicks the wooden partition with a dull thud. There is the sound of munching, the grinding of teeth on hay. The leather halters creak as the animals shift their weight. It is a warm, living darkness. The cavalryman, the eques, has a different routine from the infantryman. His day begins before dawn, not with his own breakfast, but with his horses. He must check the hooves. The Romans did not use nailed horseshoes as we know them. They used hippo sandals, temporary iron plates tied on with leather straps for rough ground, or simply relied on the hardness of the hoof. The soldier lifts the leg, checking for stones, for cracks, for softness. Thrush. In the frog of the foot. A lame horse means a dead soldier. Then comes the grooming. The curry comb, made of iron, is pulled through the thick winter coat. Dust and loose hair fly into the air, dancing in the shafts of light coming through the high windows. The soldier talks to the horse in a low rumble. He checks the tack. The saddle is a marvel of Roman engineering. It has no stirrups. Those have not been invented yet. Instead, it has 4 leather horns, one at each corner, that grip the rider's thighs, locking him into place. This allows him to swing a sword or throw a spear without falling off, providing a stable platform on a moving base. The cavalry are the eyes of the army that see beyond the horizon. While the watchtowers see what is coming, the cavalry go out to find it. These are the exploratores, the scouts. Imagine a patrol leaving the fort at dawn, a turma of 30 men. They ride out through the main gate, their hooves clattering loudly on the paving stones, then softening as they hit the dirt of the track. They pass the bathhouse, pass the civilian settlement, which is just waking up, and head north. They pass through the gate of the Mile Castle, the heavy doors swinging open to let them through. Now they are in the Barbaricum, the land beyond the wall. The psychology shifts immediately. Behind the wall, there is law, order, and backup. Here, there is only the wilderness. The landscape is vast, rolling hills covered in heather and gorse, patches of bog that can swallow a horse to its belly, and thick, tangled forests. The patrol moves in a loose formation. They do not march. They flow. They follow the contours of the land, staying below the ridgelines to avoid being silhouetted against the sky. They are looking for signs. A footprint in the mud. A broken branch. the ashes of a campfire. They are reading the text of the landscape. Is the grass trampled? Which way are the birds flying? Silence is their armor. They wrap cloth around the metal parts of their harness to stop the jingle. They communicate with hand signals. Stop, listen, move forward. The weather is often the greatest enemy. A sudden mist can roll in, obscuring the world in a white, wet blanket. In the fog, sound travels strangely. A sheep bleating can sound like a man shouting. The patrol must stay close, visual contact reduced to a few yards. The damp seeps into everything. The wool of the cloak, the leather of the saddle, the bones of the rider. Sometimes they patrol for days. They camp in the open, sleeping next to their horses, eating cold rations because a fire would reveal their position. They are the ghosts of the frontier, haunting the woods, ensuring that no large force can gather without Rome knowing. When they return to the fort, perhaps 3 days later, the relief is palpable. Seeing the gray line of the wall in the distance is like seeing the shore after a long swim. The gates open. They ride in, tired, dirty, smelling of wet dog and horse. They dismount. The infantrymen on guard duty look at them with a mix of envy and pity. Envy for their freedom, pity for their exposure. Back inside the fort, the cavalryman tends to his horse before himself. He rubs it down with straw to dry the sweat. He checks the back for saddle sores. He feeds it grain. Only then does he go to the barracks, take off his boots, and lie down. Let us leave the stables and move to a quieter, more solemn part of the fort. In a society where life is fragile and death is a constant companion, the favor of the gods is not a metaphor, it is a tactical necessity. We are going to look at the religious life of the frontier. Every fort is a sacred space. The Principia, the headquarters, is a temple to the discipline of the army and the genius of the emperor. But scattered throughout the fort and the settlement outside are altars to a multitude of gods. The Roman soldier is pragmatic. He will pray to anyone who listens. He worships Jupiter, Mars, and Minerva, the state gods of Rome. But he also worships the local gods. Why take the risk of offending the spirits of the land you are occupying? So we find altars dedicated to Cosidius, a local hunter god of the north, depicted as a warrior. We find altars to Meponus, the youth god. Walk through the Vicus again. You might find a small temple, a Mithraeum. This is a temple to Mithras, a god of Persian origin who became incredibly popular with the soldiers. His temples are built to resemble caves. They are dark, subterranean, and narrow. Let us descend into a Mithraeum. It is small, sinking into the earth. There are benches along the side walls for the initiates to recline on during the ritual meal. At the far end, in the flickering light of oil lamps, is the cult image. Mithras killing the bull. It is a violent, dynamic image carved in stone. The air here is thick with incense and mystery. This is a mystery cult. Its secrets are known only to the members. There are 7 grades of initiation, from raven to father. For the soldier, bound by the strict hierarchy of the army, this secret brotherhood offers a different kind of connection. In the dark of the Mithraeum, a centurion might sit beside a common soldier, united by their shared secrets. It is a place of sensory deprivation and focused attention. The darkness, the smell of roasted meat from the ritual feast, the chanting. It is an escape from the gray reality of the wall. It is a touch of the cosmic in a world of mud. But not all worship is so secret. Walk back to the parade ground. On specific festival days, the entire garrison assembles. An altar is set up. A fire is kindled. An animal, a bull, a sheep, or a pig, is let out. The victim must go willingly. If it struggles, it is a bad omen. The priest, his head covered with a fold of his toga, recites the prayers. He must not stumble over a single syllable, or the ritual must start again from the beginning. The silence of the 500 men watching is absolute. The animal is sacrificed. The smoke rises. The entrails are examined by the haruspecs to read the will of the gods. If the liver is healthy, the omens are good. The army can march. The wall will hold. These rituals mark the passage of the year. The Rosalia, the festival of roses, where the standards are decorated with flowers. The Saturnalia, where the social order is inverted and the officers serve the men. These festivals provide a rhythm to the year, breaking up the endless monotony of the watch. They connect the soldier on this distant, rainy island to the soldier in Syria, in Egypt, in Rome itself. They are all doing the same thing, at the same time. It is the spiritual glue of the empire. We must also consider the water, not just for drinking, but as a sacred element. Near the fort, there is often a holy well or a spring. Offerings are thrown in, coins, bent pins, small carved figurines. "Keep me safe," whispers the soldier as he tosses a bronze A's into the dark water. "Let me see my family again." The water accepts the offering and flows on, indifferent and eternal. And finally, there is the cult of the dead. Rome does not bury its dead inside the walls. The city of the living must remain pure. So the cemeteries line the roads leading out of the fort. As you walk away from the settlement, you pass the tombstones. They are simple slabs carved with the image of the deceased. A cavalryman riding down a barbarian, a centurion holding his vine staff, and the inscriptions: DM, Dis Manibus, to the spirits of the departed. Here lies Marcus, holding the rank of Optio, who lived 40 years. He served 20 years. His heir had this made. They are concise biographies. They speak of a life defined by service. Walking past these stones in the twilight, you are walking past the history of the unit. The ghosts of the regiment are always on the flank. They remind the living that the wall has a cost. The defense system is, in the end, a machine made of people. It is built of stone, yes, but it is mortared with the lives of thousands of men who stood in the rain, year after year, holding the line. Leaving the quiet stones of the cemetery, we turn our attention back to the gates of the fort. While the wall was a barrier designed to stop armies, it was not a seal that stopped life. In fact, the frontier was a zone of intense economic osmosis. The soldiers needed things that the army did not supply, and the locals, the barbarians, desired the luxuries of Rome. This brings us to the market days. Imagine a designated day when the northern gates are thrown open, not for war, but for commerce. A temporary market springs up in the shadow of the walls. It is a scene of controlled chaos and colorful interaction. The local tribespeople approach. They are not the screaming warriors of nightmares. They are farmers, herdsmen, and craftsmen. They wear trousers of checked wool, the ancestors of tartan, and heavy cloaks fastened with iron brooches. They bring their goods to the edge of the empire. What are they selling? They bring cattle, shaggy and tough, driven in lowing herds. They bring hides and furs, bear, wolf, beaver, essential for keeping warm in the unheated barracks. They bring amber, gathered from distant northern shores, glowing like frozen honey in the sunlight. They bring wild honey, slaves, and hunting dogs, prized for their ferocity. On the other side of the exchange, the Roman merchants set up their stalls. They offer the products of the Mediterranean, wine, thick and sweet, transported in ceramic amphorae, olive oil, the liquid gold of the south, Pottery, the famous Samian ware, bright red and glossy, stamped with intricate designs. Glass beads, bronze jewelry, and coins. The sound of the market is a babble of tongues. Latin mixes with Celtic dialects, Germanic tongues, and the broken pidgin language of trade. Hands gesture, fingers count, coins are weighed. A soldier might buy a warm fur liner for his helmet. A local chieftain might buy a set of silver cups to impress his guests at a feast. This trade is the soft power of Rome. The wall stops the raiding parties, but the wine and the pottery conquer the culture. Slowly, over generations, the people beyond the wall begin to drink from Roman cups, wear Roman brooches, and use Roman coins. The hard line of the frontier begins to blur culturally, even if the stones remain distinct. We must also look closer at the people who live in the vicus, the settlement outside the fort, for they are the ones who facilitate much of this life. The army has a strict rule. A serving soldier cannot legally marry. The logic is that his loyalty must be to the legion, not to a family. But human nature is stronger than imperial law. In reality, most soldiers have unofficial wives and families living in the vicus. These relationships are an open secret. The commanders know, the centurions know, and everyone ignores the rule. When a soldier retires after 25 years, the marriage is made official, and his children are legitimized. So walk through the vicus during the day while the men are on duty. It is a world of women and children. We see a woman sitting in a doorway, spinning wool on a drop spindle. The spindle whirls. Whir, whir, twisting the raw fleece into strong thread. She is making a new tunic for her husband. She might be a local woman, born in these hills, who fell in love with a Syrian archer or a Spanish cavalryman. The household is a fusion of cultures. They might eat local porridge, but season it with Roman fish sauce, garum. They might pray to local spirits, but speak Latin at the dinner table. Children run through the muddy streets. They play with hoops and sticks, or with knuckle bones, astragaloi. They grow up in the shadow of the eagle. They know the bugle calls as well as their fathers do. They know which centurion is strict and which one is kind. These children are the future of the army. Most sons of soldiers will become soldiers themselves, born in the camp, castris, raised in the vicus, and enlisted at 18. The frontier breeds its own defenders. We also see the specialized craftsmen of the vicus, the tanner, whose workshop smells of urine and oak bark, processing the hides brought in by the hunters, the shoemaker, the suitor, cutting thick leather soles for the thousands of boots that wear out on the military roads, the potter, spinning his wheel, his hands coated in wet clay, turning out bowl after bowl for the mess tents. As we observe these people, we notice their clothing. The classic image of the Roman soldier in a short tunic and bare legs is a Mediterranean fiction. Here, on the northern edge, the climate dictates the fashion. The Romans, practical as ever, adapted. They adopted the bracchi, trousers. To a traditional Roman in Italy, trousers were the mark of a barbarian, effeminate, and strange. But when the wind chill is -10 degrees, fashion bows to survival. The soldiers wear tight-fitting wool trousers that go down to the calf or the ankle. On their feet, inside the heavy hobnailed boots, they wear udons, socks. Archaeologists have found letters written on thin slivers of wood, the Vindolanda tablets, where soldiers beg their families to send more socks. I have sent you pairs of socks from Satua, 2 pairs of sandals and 2 pairs of underpants, reads one letter. It is a deeply human request. the might of the Roman Empire resting on the comfort of a warm pair of wool socks. They wear heavy cloaks, the paenula or the sagum. This is a large rectangle of thick felted wool. It is naturally water-resistant due to the lanolin in the wool. It serves as a coat during the day and a sleeping bag at night. Fastened with a heavy bronze brooch at the shoulder, it is the soldier's shell. When it rains, the wool gets heavy and smells of wet sheep, but it keeps the core warm. They also wear scarves, focale, wrapped around the neck to prevent the armor from chafing the skin, and in winter, they might wear fur-lined hats or simply pull the hood of their cloak up over their helmets. The uniform is a mix of regulation equipment and personal adaptation. And speaking of winter, let us watch the season change on the frontier. The transition is slow and gray. The daylight hours shorten. The sun, when it appears, is a pale, watery disk low in the southern sky, providing little warmth. The mud in the Vicus freezes into hard, jagged ruts that twist ankles. Then the snow comes. It begins as a silence. The wind dies down. The sky turns a uniform, heavy white. The first flakes fall, large and soft. They settle on the crenellations of the wall, capping each stone tooth with a white pillow. They settle on the thatch roofs of the Vicus. They settle on the shoulders of the sentry. The snow changes the acoustics of the frontier. It muffles sound. The tramp of boots is deadened. The world becomes hushed. The landscape is simplified into black and white, the black of the tree trunks and the white of the snow. For the soldiers, winter is a time of endurance. The construction work stops. You cannot lay mortar in freezing temperatures. It will crack. So the masons put down their trowels. The focus shifts to maintenance and survival. Inside the barracks, the men crowd around the hearth. The fire is fed constantly with peat or wood. The air is smoky, stinging the eyes, but it is warm. They repair their kit. They oil their leather gear heavily to stop it from cracking in the cold. They sharpen their weapons. They tell stories. A veteran from the Danube frontier tells tales of freezing rivers and wars against the Dacians. A recruit from sunny Spain listens, shivering, wondering why he was sent to this frozen island at the end of the world. They gamble. They drink warm wine spiced with herbs. They sleep more, hibernating like bears in their stone cave. Outside, the patrols continue, but they are shorter. The horses struggle in the deep drifts. The sentries on the wall are rotated more frequently, perhaps every hour, to prevent frostbite. A soldier stands on the wall walk, wrapping his cloak tight. He stamps his feet. Thump, thump. He blows into his cupped hands. His breath forms a cloud of ice crystals. He looks out at the north. The forest is a skeleton of black branches against the white ground. The tracks of animals are visible now. A fox, a wolf, a deer. The enemy is quiet too. The tribes are in their roundhouses, gathered around their own fires. Winter is the great truce. The cold conquers everyone equally. The logistical challenges increase. The roads are slippery. The carts struggle to bring in the grain. The firewood supply becomes critical. The horea, the granary we visited earlier, is now the most important building in the fort. The level of grain in the bins is checked daily. If the snow blocks the passes, the garrison must survive on what it has. There is a beauty to the winter frontier. The icicles hanging from the gatehouse arch, glittering like diamond daggers. The crunch of fresh snow underfoot. The stark contrast of the red tile roofs against the white landscape. But it is a deadly beauty. A man lost in a blizzard just a mile from the fort can die as surely as if he were struck by a sword. The bathhouse becomes a sanctuary. The contrast between the biting cold outside and the steam-filled caldarium inside is never more appreciated than in January. To sit in hot water while the snow falls against the window pane is the ultimate luxury. It reminds the soldier that he is civilized, that he has mastered the elements, even here. As the winter drags on, the yearning for spring grows. The men watch for the first signs, the melting of the icicles, the shoots of green grass pushing through the slush, the return of the migrating birds. But for now, let us stay in the depth of winter. Let us imagine the long night. The sun sets at 4 in the afternoon. Darkness rules for 16 hours. The fort is an island of light in a sea of black. The torches flare. The smoke rises. The sentry watches the darkness, and the darkness watches back. This is the rhythm of the year, the building in summer, the waiting in winter, the expansion and the contraction, the breathing of the empire. And in this deep, cold rhythm, we find our own stillness. The wall stands firm, a silent line of gray against the white snow. The soldiers sleep, gaining strength for the dawn that is still hours away. The empire breathes out, and silence reclaims the frontier. So, let us leave them to their rest, and find our own. The gates are shut, the world is quiet, and the watch is over. If you are still awake, thank you for traveling with me. If you are asleep, then my work is done. Good night. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.